do nothing. If you're not doing your job right, I guess you could take the money and do something else with it. But if you honestly, truly care for the children, you're going to spend that money for them, even if it's just electricity, part of the electricity bill, because if they're all on iPhones, you're going to spend that money if you're doing it for the right reason. And believe me, there are people out there that are not doing it for the right reasons. So.
Have you ever placed any children in foster homes yourself, or do you help the process and someone else does it?
I do not pick the foster home. DCFS is the top people, and then they contract different agencies to work for them because they just can't handle all of it themselves. So different agencies are under DCFS. So DCFS is the boss, and then they pay an agency to do the job. So a call will come in, something's going on at midnight. The DCFS on-call worker will go out to the home, make the assessment and feel if the child needs to be pulled or just maybe this family just needs help and the child's not necessarily in danger. Maybe they just don't have any money. And we don't want to take a child just because, your family doesn't have money. We want to help you. But if that child is then removed, that DCFS worker will find the placement for that child. And then they drop it off at our doorstep. They say, okay, we're done. We found the home. This is why the child was pulled. And then now they would assign one of the caseworkers to go into the house. And then they will handle all of the services and that kind of stuff. The only time I would place a child is if, let's say, the house that DCFS picked, everything was all fine and dandy, but now they moved in their uncle that's a felon. I have to remove that child. So then we have a list of foster parents, and I'm pretty sure different agencies do it differently. We have a list of foster parents. Some of them have preferences. Only want 5 and older, only want, no teenagers or something like that. And we just go down that list to find a home for that child, unless there's another family member that steps up. DCFS always, first go is always to look for the parents or look for family. And that can be hard when you have a family of drug addicts because, okay, we took them from mom, who's a drug addict, but we're going to look at your sister. Well, come to find out your sister's on drugs too. And not to say that whole families are, there might be just one person in that family. But a lot of times I've noticed that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And so you may have groups, everybody in the family. Nobody could pass a background check. So that's when you have to start looking at what we call traditional homes. And that's what we were. We didn't know anybody in foster care that we were doing it for. We were just taking people that just needed homes.
In our book Paper Things, sometimes Ari and Gage stay at a shelter. About how many kids do you talk to or take care of that are from a shelter?
My caseload, I did not have any children on that needed to go to shelter. Shelter is last ditch effort. A shelter is remember when I said that you call and you start looking for homes. You start with your agency, you call and look for your homes. You go down the 20 or so list, no one can take this child. Then you call a different agency. We have numbers to all the different agencies. We call a different agency. And we ask them either for their list or if they could call their people and see if they'd be willing to take a 12-year-old boy with ADHD. They'll go down their list. They call back and say, no, we don't have anybody. So we do that to all of the agencies that we have contact with in town. If we get through all of those agencies and there's no one that can take this child, which is heartbreaking, you have no one that can take this child, that child then gets placed in a shelter. And the unfortunate part of that is that we don't really have any right here in this Bloomington Normal area. You're sending kids to Chicago, you're sending kids to Springfield. And these are kids that just imagine you're here in school, everything's going handy dandy. Tomorrow you're now staying in Chicago. You don't get, it's just done. You're just up and you're gone. No, let's go up there and see the place. It's literally, I'm taking you tonight to drop you off at a shelter. And it's like an orphanage kind of way. Mostly children that are in shelters are teenagers, because teenagers are teenagers in general. You already have issues because you're teenagers. But then on top of seeing your mother beat every day, on top of living in 4 different homes, you've got issues. It doesn't mean that those issues can't be worked on, but you've got issues. Those are things that, as a caseworker, we try to, get the children therapy. We try to get them anything that they need so that they can better themselves. But as far as shelters go, it's pretty much, it is what it is. It's kind of like an orphanage. They do get to go to school and stuff like that, but it is, and that could be temporary. That bed in that place may only be for 3 weeks. So that's all they got. And then after that 3 weeks, we got to find them a different place. So shelters are the worst. I've been blessed that I have not had to put a child in shelter. But I have had other caseworkers that, call us sissies or whatever, that have driven away from that shelter after leaving that kid and just bawled because they have nothing. They have no one that they know, and they're here, and it's just like, bye. And so those are sad. Those are sad. We still see them when they're in shelter, depending on their behaviors and what they're classified as. We would probably see them once or twice a month. And a lot of times for those kids, the caseworker is the only one that they've known, like the same consistent person in their life, not their parents, not the same consistent person is the caseworker. And that, if you think about that, that's sad itself. You would hope that the consistent person in your life would be a family member or, even a teacher, someone, but a lot of these kids don't have that.
Now we're moving on to foster children and parents.
Okay.
What's the most common age for being adopted or fostered?
A lot of people, when they come into foster care as wanting to be foster parents, a lot of them don't know what they're getting into. You just don't. You can read up on it, you can do all of that, but when you're standing in front of a child that is throwing things at you and doesn't want to be there and is running away every other night, that can't, you could read that in a book, but you don't know what that feels like until it really happens. But I would say a lot of people want younger children. They feel that younger children don't have as much trauma, or younger kids are easy because they can control them, and that's not necessarily the truth. But, there are people that, I've had friends that foster, and they don't want, they said they need to be walking, talking, changing their own pants. I'm not doing diapers. Straight up, she was like, I want older kids. And they only took teenage kids. And teenage is the hardest. Teenage children are the hardest to place. They get moved the most. Even when they're placed with family doesn't realize how much issues or trauma that they've had, and they can't do it either for the safety of their family, or they just fiscally, financially can't do it. There's a lot of factors that play into that. I think it's okay that you say, I can't do this, because I wouldn't want you sitting there fostering a child and doing a bad job of it because you can't do it. We have those people that, have a child for 2 days and say, hey, I can't do this. That's fine. I understand that. However, when it gets to, you have just some people that are just, they're not cut out for it and they shouldn't have done it. We had one family She was a family member. She took this teenage boy and everything was all good. And then one night she just says, without warning, without anything, I don't want him anymore. I'm dropping him off at the fire department or at the police station. She just dropped him off at the police station and said, someone come and get him. Imagine being a teenage child sitting in a police station with all your stuff right there. That lady should have never been a foster parent. She wasn't cut out for it. And that's not a bad thing. But we wish she would have known this before she caused that damage to that child. Nobody wants to be dropped off at a police station and told, I don't want you. Peace out. So, younger children are easier to go. They're just, that's what they want. Younger children are easier to go. The older, the harder. You know, because you will have a few families that are saying, I want teenagers. That's what I deal with best. But those are few and far between. And a lot of times, even if they are willing to take a teenager, they're not willing to take 3 teenagers. You know, so you could be with your sister or your brother, and they're saying, we're only going to take 1. You know, do we send that 1 to that foster home and find placements for these 2? Or do we continue to look for a home for all 3? Not a lot of people are signing up for 3 teenagers. It's just, it's unfortunate. They're just not. And if they do, it would be they would say that they can stay here until you find a permanent. Like, you know, I'll give you a month. But again, that means that child will have to move again. And be separated from your sibling. Think if you've lost your parents, all the people you know is just your siblings, and they're taking them away from you too. I think I would be bad. I think I would run away. I think I would throw things. I would not be a happy kid. I wouldn't. And then who wants to keep me if I'm throwing things? And who wants to keep me if I'm cursing and talking bad? So it's like a downhill thing. The parents are going to be like, well, we don't want to keep him. He's wild. Well, he's wild because his siblings are gone. His parents are gone. And now he's out here and nobody knows nobody. So, does that answer it? Yeah.
Hi, I'm gonna pause for a 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
We've switched classes, so the bells rang. Are there any like final questions that we want to ask? Because we gotta get you guys to class.
If it's okay for me asking, but how old are your children now?
My children. I have a 5-year-old girl, a 6-year-old boy. He has autism. I have an 11-year-old girl and 2 13-year-olds, a boy and a girl. So mine are still younger. My husband says, because our 2 biological are older, and he said, we were almost out. They were like junior high. They were like, we could see the finish line. And then we have these, you know. And he says it jokingly. We would never, ever, we don't think of them as adopted children. They're our children. But it is, we have, you know, a gap between the 6-year-old and the 11-year-old. And we call them the bigs and the littles. They're all on their own things. My, you know, older kids are all going to parties and in sports and all these. And these guys want to still do play dates. So it can be a little crazy. But everybody thinks having 5 kids is crazy too. But I want 1 more. My husband said no. Like 6 is such a round number. And my schedule can be flexible enough that I could still participate in their school plays and their things like that. That's the kind of parent I wanted to be. I don't want to just have so many kids that I don't get to be with them, or I can't go into any of their football games or things like that. So I think you just have to find what's best for you and go with that. And I just think if you're helping in any way that you can. We have an old lady, she just knits. That's what she loves to do. She just knits. So she drops us off hats for newborns. And that's awesome because we have kids that come in that don't have hats, you know, but that's what she found that she can do. And I always try to, but I'm a social worker, so I'm a softie. I'm always trying to get people to do something. You know, my kids, when they get new things, they have to donate old things. Cheer for cleaning up the house, for one. And two, you don't need 7 dump trucks.